Heavenly Father, I pray for everyone watching this video right now. May you bless them with peace, joy, and breakthroughs in their lives. Amen. Hello, my wonderful family. I am so glad and grateful to have you here with me today. Your support means the world, and I truly don't take it for granted. Before we dive into today's powerful story, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, drop a comment below to share your thoughts, and of course, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update from this channel. Your Honor, my client requests an immediate recess. The words cut through the sterile courthouse air like a blade, but Elena Vasquez didn't flinch. She sat perfectly still at the plaintiff's table, her hands folded over the slight curve of her belly where their daughter grew. The daughter Michael had demanded she terminate just 3 months ago. Michael's attorney, the expensive one with the silk tie and practiced smile, was on his feet now, panic barely concealed behind his professional mask. This is highly irregular. We weren't notified of any additional evidence. Judge Martinez raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Vasquez, you have something to present to the court? Elena stood slowly, the weight of 6 months of pregnancy making the movement deliberate. But it wasn't the baby that made her feel heavy. It was the manila envelope in her hands. The one that would either save her marriage or destroy the man she'd loved for 8 years. I do, Your Honor. Evidence that I believe the court, and my husband, should see before any divorce decree is finalized. Michael's face had gone ashen. She could feel his stare burning into her back, could almost hear his mind racing. What could she possibly have? He'd been so careful. The offshore accounts, the business deals, the carefully constructed lies about working late. All of it had been meticulously planned. But Elena had always been smarter than he gave her credit for. That was his first mistake. His second was underestimating what a woman could discover when the man she loved started coming home smelling like another woman's perfume. Approach the bench, Judge Martinez instructed. Elena's heels clicked against the marble floor. The same Louboutin heels Michael had bought her for their 5th anniversary, back when he still remembered what love meant. Back before Rebecca Morrison and her sultry laugh and her complete willingness to be the other woman in a marriage that had produced 2 beautiful children and a successful architectural firm. She handed the envelope to the judge, aware that every eye in the courtroom was on her. Michael's business partner sat in the gallery, probably wondering why his Monday morning had been derailed by domestic drama. Rebecca herself sat 3 rows back, her perfectly manicured fingers twisted in her lap, her confidence finally showing cracks. Judge Martinez opened the envelope and pulled out the first document. His expression remained neutral, but Elena caught the subtle widening of his eyes. Mrs. Vasquez, where did you obtain these documents? From my husband's private safe, Your Honor. The one he thought I didn't know about. Elena kept her voice steady, professional. She'd practiced this moment in her bathroom mirror every morning for 2 weeks, perfecting the tone that would convey strength without vindictiveness. I believe they demonstrate that this divorce filing may not be what it appears to be. Michael's chair scraped against the floor as he stood. Elena, what are you doing? She turned to look at him, then really look at him. This man who had held her hand through 2 pregnancies, who had built sandcastles with their son Tommy on countless Saturday mornings, who had whispered promises about growing old together while they painted the nursery for the baby that was supposedly going to complete their family. I'm doing what you should have done months ago, Michael. I'm telling the truth. Judge Martinez was studying the second document now, his judicial composure slipping just enough for Elena to catch it. Good. If she could surprise a family court judge who'd seen everything, then what she'd discovered was even bigger than she'd thought. Your Honor, Michael's attorney tried again. Whatever Mrs. Vasquez believes she's found. Mr. Harrison, I suggest you look at these documents before you continue. The judge's voice carried a warning that made the expensive lawyer fall silent. Elena felt the baby kick, a strong, defiant movement that seemed to echo her own resolve. This little girl would grow up knowing that her mother had fought for what was right, even when it meant risking everything. Because what Elena had found in that safe wasn't just evidence of Michael's affair. It wasn't even just proof of the secret bank accounts he'd been using to hide assets before filing for divorce. What she'd found would expose a web of lies that reached far beyond their marriage, involving business partners, city contracts, and the kind of money that bought silence and destroyed lives. Michael didn't just want a divorce so he could be with Rebecca. He needed Elena out of the picture before anyone discovered what he'd really been doing for the past 3 years. before anyone realized that the successful architectural firm bearing both their names had been built on a foundation of fraud that could topple everything they'd worked for. The judge finished reading and looked up, his gaze moving from Elena to Michael and back again. I'm calling a 30-minute recess. Mr. Morrison, Mrs. Vasquez, I'll see both of you in my chambers. Immediately. As the courtroom erupted in whispered speculation, Elena gathered her purse and her courage. She'd spent 6 months believing that her marriage was ending because she wasn't enough for Michael anymore. 6 months thinking that some women were just destined to be replaced by younger, more exciting versions. She'd been wrong. This wasn't about love at all. This was about money, power, and the kind of secrets that could send people to prison. And now Michael knew that she knew. Welcome to a story that will challenge everything you think you know about love, betrayal, and the lengths people will go to protect their deepest secrets. What started as a simple divorce case is about to become something much more dangerous. Because when you back a desperate man into a corner, he doesn't always choose surrender. Elena's about to discover that some battles are worth fighting, even when victory might cost her everything she has left to lose. The judge's chambers felt smaller than Elena remembered from their custody mediation 2 years ago, when Tommy had started kindergarten and they'd needed to adjust their work schedules. Back then, they'd sat side by side, Michael's hand warm on her knee as they'd navigated the legal complexities of joint custody with Tommy's biological father, Elena's ex-husband from her first marriage. Now Michael sat across from her like a stranger, his jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth. Mrs. Vasquez, Judge Martinez began, settling behind his desk with the envelope's contents spread before him like evidence at a crime scene. These are serious allegations. Before we proceed, I need to understand exactly how you came to possess these documents. Elena's fingers found the wedding ring she still wore. White gold with tiny diamonds that had once caught the light every time she reached for Michael's hand. 3 weeks ago, I found a receipt in my husband's jacket pocket. It was from a jewelry store downtown. A receipt for a necklace that cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. Michael's face flushed. Elena, that was a gift for Rebecca Morrison, yes. I figured that out when I saw her wearing it at Tommy's school play last Tuesday. Elena's voice remained steady, but her hands trembled slightly. The same night you told me you had to work late on the Henderson project. Judge Martinez raised a hand to stop Michael from responding. Continue, Mrs. Vasquez. I've handled our business finances for 8 years, Your Honor. I know every account, every client, every project. So when I saw that receipt, I started wondering where that money came from. Michael makes good money, but not surprise $15,000 necklace money. The first time Elena had suspected something was wrong wasn't because of another woman. It was because of the numbers that didn't add up. Michael had always been passionate about architecture, but he'd never been detail-oriented about money. That had been her job, keeping track of invoices, managing payroll, handling the books for Vasquez and Associates. I started noticing discrepancies about 6 months ago, Elena continued, her accountant's mind automatically organizing the timeline. Small ones at first. Client payments that came in higher than the invoiced amounts, but the excess never appeared in our business accounts. Project materials that were billed at one price but delivered receipts showing different costs. Michael was staring at his hands now, and Elena could see the exact moment he realized how much trouble he was in. She'd always been able to read him. His tells when he was nervous, the way his left eyebrow twitched when he was calculating his next move. 8 years of marriage had made them experts in each other's habits. That intimacy was both what had saved her and what was destroying her now. The safe was installed 3 months after I got pregnant with Isabella, Elena said, unconsciously placing her hand on her belly. Michael told me it was for important business documents. Birth certificates, insurance papers, things like that. He was so thoughtful about it, so concerned about protecting our family's future. Judge Martinez glanced at the documents again. And you had access to this safe? I found the combination written in his handwriting on a piece of paper tucked inside his architecture portfolio. The same portfolio I've packed for his business trips dozens of times. Elena's voice caught slightly. He used our wedding date backwards. 6/18/2015. The detail hit Michael like a physical blow. She could see it in the way his shoulders sagged, the way his breathing became shallow. He'd used their most sacred memory as the key to hiding his betrayal from her. Mrs. Vasquez, what exactly did you find in that safe? Elena looked directly at Michael as she answered. Bank statements for 3 accounts I'd never seen before. All opened within the past 2 years. all showing regular deposits that correspond exactly with discrepancies I'd noticed in our business accounts. Michael finally found his voice. Elena, you don't understand. I found invoices for the Morrison construction project showing that the city paid Vasquez and Associates $2.4 million. But our business account only shows receiving $1.8 million. Where did the other $600,000 go, Michael? The silence in the room was deafening. Judge Martinez was reviewing the bank statements with the focused attention of someone who'd seen financial fraud before and recognized the patterns. I found contracts with signatures I'd never seen before. City permits approved without the usual waiting periods. And I found photographs. Elena's voice hardened. Photographs of city council meetings where my husband is shaking hands with people who, according to these bank statements, have been making regular payments to his personal accounts. Michael shot to his feet. Those weren't bribes, Elena. Those were consulting fees. Legitimate consulting fees for architectural advice on zoning issues. Consulting fees paid to accounts that I, as your business partner and wife, knew nothing about? Elena stood as well, the baby's weight making her movements slow but determined. Consulting fees that coincidentally started the same month you began working with Rebecca Morrison's construction company? The pieces clicked into place with brutal clarity. Rebecca wasn't just Michael's mistress. She was his business partner in a scheme to defraud the city. The affair was just a convenient bonus, a way to ensure her silence and cooperation. Mrs. Vasquez, Judge Martinez said carefully, are you alleging that your husband has been involved in municipal fraud? I'm alleging that my husband has been taking bribes to fast-track construction permits and inflate project costs, then splitting the profits with Morrison Construction through hidden accounts. Elena's voice was gaining strength with each word. I'm alleging that our architectural firm, the business that bears my name, has been used to launder money stolen from city taxpayers. Michael's expensive attorney was frantically scribbling notes, probably calculating how quickly he could withdraw from this case before it became a criminal matter. And I'm alleging, Elena continued, that when Michael realized I was pregnant and might start asking questions about our finances, he decided it would be easier to divorce me and take control of the business completely than to risk me discovering what he'd been doing. The baby kicked again, harder this time, as if Isabella could sense the tension in the room. Elena placed both hands on her belly, drawing strength from the life growing inside her. Your Honor, my husband didn't ask for this divorce because he fell out of love with me. He asked for it because he needs me gone before anyone else discovers that he's been stealing from the city for 2 years. Michael sat down heavily, his face pale. Elena, you have to understand. The business was failing. We were 3 months away from bankruptcy. The city contracts were the only thing keeping us afloat. So you decided to steal? I decided to survive. Michael's voice cracked with something that might have been genuine desperation. Do you know what it's like to watch everything you've built crumbling while your pregnant wife talks about buying a bigger house and planning for college funds? I was drowning, Elena. The bribes weren't supposed to be permanent. They were supposed to be a bridge until we could get legitimate contracts. Elena stared at her husband, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. The man she'd fallen in love with had been honest to a fault. Someone who returned extra change to cashiers and insisted on paying his fair share of every restaurant bill. The man sitting across from her now was someone who justified theft as survival. When did it start? She asked quietly. Michael's shoulders slumped further. 6 months after Tommy's surgery. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. Tommy's emergency appendectomy had cost them nearly $30,000 after insurance. They'd maxed out credit cards, borrowed against their retirement funds, and Elena had taken a second job doing bookkeeping for other small businesses just to make the payments. You've been stealing from the city to pay for our son's medical bills? I've been stealing from the city to keep our family from losing everything, Michael shot back. Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I planned to become the kind of man who takes bribes? Elena felt something inside her chest crack open. Not just her heart breaking for their marriage, but her understanding of who Michael really was. The man she'd married would have worked 3 jobs and lived in a studio apartment before he'd compromise his integrity. The man sitting across from her had chosen crime over honesty, betrayal over trust. Your Honor, Elena said, her voice steadier than she felt. I want full custody of both children, full ownership of the business, and I want my husband's accounts frozen pending a criminal investigation. Michael's head snapped up. Elena, you can't. I can and I will. She looked directly into his eyes, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time in months. Because the man I married would never have put our children at risk by building our life on stolen money. The man I married would have told me the truth and let us figure out a solution together. Judge Martinez was already reaching for his phone. I'm ordering an immediate injunction freezing all accounts pending investigation. Mrs. Vasquez, you'll need to retain criminal counsel immediately. Mr. Vasquez, I strongly recommend you do the same. As Michael's world collapsed around him, Elena felt an unexpected surge of clarity. This wasn't just about discovering his affair or even his financial crimes. This was about realizing that the man she'd built her life with had been willing to sacrifice everything. Their marriage, their family, their children's security, rather than admit he needed help. And that betrayal cut deeper than any affair ever could. But as she gathered her purse and prepared to leave the judge's chambers, Elena made a decision that would haunt them both. She wasn't going to press charges. Not yet, because buried in those bank statements was something else. Something that proved Michael wasn't working alone, and something that suggested the fraud went much deeper than city construction contracts. Elena was going to find out exactly how deep this conspiracy went, and then she was going to destroy everyone involved. Elena made it exactly 3 blocks from the courthouse before her phone rang. Unknown number. Local area code. Mrs. Vasquez? This is Detective James Rivera with the Financial Crimes Unit. I understand you just left a very interesting meeting with Judge Martinez. Elena pulled her car over to the side of the road, her hands shaking as she shifted into park. How did you? Judge Martinez is required to report potential municipal fraud cases immediately. Ma'am, I need you to know that you may be in danger. Can you tell me where you are right now? The words hit Elena like ice water. In all her planning, all her careful preparation for this moment, she'd somehow never considered that exposing Michael might put her own life at risk. I'm on Elm Street, about 3 blocks south of the courthouse. Stay exactly where you are. I'm sending a patrol car to escort you to the station. Do not go home. Do not contact your husband. Do not trust anyone until we've had a chance to talk. Elena's mind raced. My children, my son is at school, my stepdaughter. Already being secured. Mrs. Vasquez, how much do you know about Morrison Construction? Just that they've been working with my husband on city contracts. And that Rebecca Morrison is. Elena swallowed hard. Is his mistress. Rebecca Morrison has been under federal investigation for 18 months. We believe she's the central figure in a corruption ring that extends through multiple city departments. Your husband's involvement makes him either a key witness or a major target. Elena felt the baby kick sharply, as if Isabella could sense her mother's sudden terror. Detective Rivera, what exactly are you saying? I'm saying that the bank statements you found represent just the tip of what we suspect is a multi-million-dollar operation. And I'm saying that people have been killed for knowing less than what you discovered in that safe. A black sedan pulled up behind Elena's car, followed by a patrol vehicle with its lights flashing. Elena watched in her rearview mirror as a tall man in a dark suit emerged from the sedan, mid-40s, Latino, with the kind of controlled alertness that screamed federal law enforcement. Detective Rivera approached her passenger side and tapped on the window. Elena unlocked the doors, noting automatically that he was handsome in a weathered, serious way that was nothing like Michael's polished charm. Mrs. Vasquez, I'm going to need you to come with me. We have a lot to discuss, and not much time to do it. Time for what? Rivera glanced around the street, his eyes constantly moving, assessing threats Elena couldn't even see. Time to decide whether you're going to help us take down the biggest municipal corruption case this city has seen in 20 years, or whether you're going to disappear into witness protection before they decide you know too much to live. Elena stared at him, her carefully ordered world tilting completely off its axis. This morning I thought I was just getting divorced. This morning you were. Now you're sitting on evidence that could topple half the city government and send a dozen people to federal prison. Rivera's voice was gentle but urgent. Including your husband. You want me to testify against Michael. I want you to help us save him before his partners decide he's become a liability. Elena's blood went cold. What do you mean? Rivera handed her a manila folder through the car window. Rebecca Morrison's previous business partner was found dead in his apartment 6 weeks ago. Apparent suicide. He'd been cooperating with our investigation. Elena opened the folder with trembling fingers. Crime scene photos. A man she didn't recognize, slumped over a desk in what looked like a home office. A single gunshot wound to the head. A suicide note typed on a computer. Mrs. Vasquez, look at the background of that photo. Elena squinted at the image. Behind the body, scattered across the desk, were architectural plans. Plans that looked exactly like the ones Michael kept in his portfolio. Those are blueprints for the Morrison projects your husband has been working on. Projects that our investigation suggests were specifically designed to facilitate money laundering through construction cost overruns. Elena's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the photos. You think Michael is in danger? I think Michael is either in danger or he's more involved than you realize. And I think you're in danger regardless. Rivera's voice carried a weight of experience with cases like this. Mrs. Vasquez, how long has your husband been working late? About 8 months. He said the Morrison contracts were demanding, required a lot of evening meetings. Those evening meetings weren't about architecture. They were about coordinating bribes with city officials, laundering money through fake invoices, and making sure everyone involved stayed quiet about the operation. Elena felt like she was drowning. How do you know all this? Because we've been tracking Morrison construction for 2 years. What we didn't have was someone on the inside, someone with access to the financial records that could prove how the money was being moved. Rivera paused. Until today, the implications crashed over Elena in waves. You want me to spy on my husband? I want you to help us gather enough evidence to prosecute the people running this operation before they decide to clean house permanently. Rivera's tone was matter of fact, but Elena could hear the urgency underneath. And yes, that means maintaining your normal relationship with Michael while gathering information for us. Elena looked down at her wedding ring, then at the crime scene photos, then at her belly where Isabella was growing. 3 generations of her family affected by a decision that had to be made right now, in a car on the side of a busy street, with a federal detective she'd met 5 minutes ago. What if I just walk away? Take the kids and disappear? Then Michael dies, probably within a week. The people running this operation don't leave loose ends. Rivera's voice was blunt. And eventually they'd find you too. There's too much money involved for them to just let this go. Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of impossible choices. If she helped the FBI, she'd be betraying the father of her unborn daughter. If she didn't, she might be condemning him to death anyway. Detective Rivera, I need you to be completely honest with me. What are the chances that Michael is innocent in all this? That he's just a victim who got in over his head? Rivera was quiet for a long moment. Based on what we know? About 20%. The financial evidence suggests he's been actively participating in the fraud for at least 18 months. And if he's guilty? If he's guilty and cooperates with our investigation, he's looking at maybe 5 to 7 years in federal prison. If he doesn't cooperate, Rivera shrugged. Life sentence or death. Those are his only options now. Elena felt something hardening inside her chest. Not hatred for Michael, but a crystalline clarity about what had to happen next. She thought about Tommy, about the baby growing inside her, about the life they'd built that was apparently founded on lies and stolen money. What do you need me to do? Go home. Act normal. Don't let Michael know that you've spoken to us. Keep gathering financial documents, but be subtle about it. Rivera handed her a business card with a phone number written on the back. That's my personal cell. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you call me immediately. Elena took the card, noting that Rivera's fingers were calloused. Not the soft hands of someone who'd spent his whole career behind a desk. How long do we have? Our sources suggest Morrison is planning to wrap up the current phase of the operation within the next 2 weeks. After that, everyone involved becomes expendable. The word hung in the air between them like a death sentence. Elena started her car, then looked back at Rivera. Detective, when this is over, when you have all the evidence you need, what happens to my family? Rivera's expression softened slightly. If your husband cooperates, if he helps us build cases against the people running this operation, his sentence gets reduced significantly. Your children get to keep their father, just not for a few years. And if he doesn't cooperate, then you get to keep your children, and they get to remember their father as someone who made terrible choices, but was brave enough to try to make things right at the end. Elena nodded, understanding that Rivera was offering her the only hope she had left. As she pulled away from the curb, following the patrol car that would escort her home, Elena made a decision that would change everything. She wasn't just going to gather evidence for the FBI. She was going to find out exactly how deep this conspiracy went, who else was involved, and what they'd done to other families like hers. And then she was going to make sure that every single person responsible for putting her children in danger paid the price. Even if one of those people was the man she'd promised to love until death do them part. But first, she had to go home and pretend that everything was normal. She had to look Michael in the eye and act like she didn't know he might be murdered for what he'd gotten himself involved in. She had to become someone she'd never imagined she could be. She had to become a liar. The irony wasn't lost on her. In order to save her marriage, she was going to have to learn how to betray it. Elena's hands trembled as she unlocked the front door to the house she'd shared with Michael for 6 years. Everything looked exactly the same. Tommy's soccer cleats kicked carelessly by the entrance, the family photos lining the hallway, Michael's reading glasses abandoned on the kitchen counter next to his morning coffee mug. But nothing would ever be the same again. "Elena," Michael's voice called from his home office. "How did it go with Judge Martinez?" The casual tone of the question hit her like a slap. He was asking about their divorce proceedings as if they were discussing dinner plans, as if he hadn't just learned that his wife had evidence of federal crimes. Elena touched the small recording device Detective Rivera had given her. No bigger than a button, sewn into the lining of her purse. Every conversation from now on would be documented, analyzed, used to build a case that could save Michael's life or destroy it completely. "It went fine," she called back, proud of how steady her voice sounded. "Judge Martinez wants to review some additional financial documents before proceeding." Michael appeared in the kitchen doorway, and Elena's breath caught. Even knowing what she knew, even understanding that he'd betrayed everything they'd built together, he was still devastatingly handsome. Still the man who'd held her hair back during morning sickness, who'd assembled Tommy's bunk bed at 2 a.m, who'd cried the first time he felt Isabella kick. "What kind of financial documents?" Michael's tone was carefully neutral, but Elena caught the tension around his eyes. "Bank statements, business accounts, the usual divorce stuff." Elena moved to the refrigerator, needing something to do with her hands. "Michael, we need to talk about Tommy and Isabella. About what this divorce means for them." It was a calculated redirection. Focusing on the children would make Michael defensive about his role as a father, not suspicious about what Elena might have discovered. "Elena, I want you to know that I'll always take care of you and the kids. Financially, I mean. Whatever happens between us, I won't let you struggle." Elena almost laughed at the bitter irony. Michael was promising to support them with money that, if Detective Rivera was right, had been stolen from taxpayers. Blood money that had already cost at least one man his life. "How?" she asked, turning to face him. "How will you take care of us?" "The divorce attorney said you're asking for 50% of the business assets. Where will the money come from?" Michael's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I have some investments you don't know about. Some separate income streams." "What kind of investments?" "Elena, why are you interrogating me? Since when do you question every financial decision I make?" "Since I discovered that my husband is a criminal," Elena thought. But what she said was, "Since I realized I don't know anything about our financial situation. Since I found out about Rebecca." Michael's face flushed, and for a moment Elena saw genuine guilt in his expression. "Elena, about Rebecca. I don't want to hear about Rebecca." Elena's voice hardened with real anger. "I want to hear about these mysterious investments that are going to support 2 children and 2 households." Michael ran his hands through his hair, a nervous habit Elena had watched for 8 years. "There are some consulting contracts with the city. Architectural review work that pays well." Elena felt her phone buzz in her pocket. A text from Detective Rivera. "Asterisk kids are secure. Tommy at after-school program with undercover officer. Surveillance team in place around your house. Asterisk." The reminder that her family was under federal protection made Elena's chest tight with fear and gratitude. Whatever happened next, her children were safe. "Michael, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Michael's entire body tensed. "What? Are you in some kind of trouble?" The question hung between them like a loaded gun. Elena watched her husband's face cycle through surprise, calculation, and something that might have been relief. "What kind of trouble would I be in?" "I don't know. You've been working late for months, you're secretive about money, you want a divorce right after I get pregnant." Elena let her voice trail off. "It feels like you're running from something." Michael was quiet for so long that Elena wondered if he was going to answer at all. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Elena, if I told you that I'd made some mistakes, some really serious mistakes, would you help me fix them?" Elena's heart stuttered. This was it. The moment where Michael could choose honesty over self-preservation, where he could trust her enough to tell the truth. What kind of mistakes? Michael looked around their kitchen, at the breakfast bar where they'd shared thousands of morning conversations, at the refrigerator covered with Tommy's artwork and ultrasound photos of Isabella, at the life they'd built together that was falling apart in real time. The kind that could send me to prison. Elena's phone buzzed again. Rivera, asterisk, keep him talking. We need details, asterisk. Michael, you're scaring me. What have you done? But instead of answering, Michael's expression suddenly changed. His eyes went cold, calculating, and Elena realized with growing horror that she'd pushed too hard, too fast. Elena, where were you before you came home? I told you. Court with Judge Martinez. That meeting ended 2 hours ago. I called the courthouse. Elena's mouth went dry. She'd been so focused on Rivera's briefing, on understanding the scope of the investigation, that she'd lost track of time. I stopped for lunch. I needed time to think. Where? What? Where did you stop for lunch? Michael's voice was taking on an edge Elena had never heard before. Which restaurant? Elena's mind raced. She couldn't remember any restaurants between the courthouse and their house. The little cafe on Maple Street. The cafe on Maple Street closed 3 months ago, Elena. The silence that followed was suffocating. Elena could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the baby's movements as if Isabella sensed the danger surrounding them. Michael walked slowly around the kitchen island, his movements deliberate and predatory. Elena, who have you been talking to? No one. I just needed time to process. You're lying. Michael's voice was flat, emotionless. You've never been a good liar, Elena. It's one of the things I used to love about you. Elena backed toward the kitchen door, her hand moving instinctively to protect her belly. Michael, you're frightening me. Good. Because you should be frightened. Michael pulled his phone from his pocket and hit a speed dial number. Rebecca? We have a problem. Elena lunged for the door, but Michael caught her wrist with reflexes she didn't know he possessed. Elena's been talking to someone. Yes, I'm sure. No, I don't know who yet, but we need to assume the worst. Elena jerked her arm free and ran for the front door, but it opened before she could reach it. A man she'd never seen before stepped inside, tall, heavily muscled, with the kind of casual violence in his posture that made Elena's blood freeze. Mrs. Vasquez? We need to have a conversation. Elena's phone was still in her pocket, still connected to Detective Rivera's surveillance team. But it might as well have been on the moon for all the good it would do her now. Who are you? She managed to ask. Someone who's very interested in what you found in your husband's safe. The man's voice was conversational, almost friendly. And someone who needs to make sure you understand how dangerous it would be to share that information with the wrong people. Michael appeared behind Elena, his face pale but determined. Elena, these are my business partners. We're all going to sit down and figure out how to resolve this situation. Resolve what situation? The situation where my pregnant wife might have inadvertently become a threat to a very important business operation. Elena felt the walls of her carefully ordered life closing in around her. She was trapped in her own home, with her own husband carrying their child, while men discussed her fate like she was a business problem to be solved. But Elena had spent the last 3 hours learning exactly how dangerous these people were. She knew about the murdered business partner, about the federal investigation, about the scope of the conspiracy that had consumed the man she'd married. And she knew that Detective Rivera's team was listening to every word. Michael, she said, loud enough for the recording device to pick up clearly. I need you to know that I love you. I need you to know that whatever you've gotten involved with, whatever Rebecca Morrison has convinced you to do, it's not too late to make the right choice. Michael's eyes filled with something that might have been tears. Elena, it's been too late for a long time. The stranger stepped closer, and Elena saw the outline of a weapon beneath his jacket. Mrs. Vasquez, we're going to take a ride. You're going to tell us exactly who you've spoken to and what you've told them. And then we're going to decide what to do with you. Elena looked at Michael, searching his face for any sign of the man she'd fallen in love with. Michael, please. Think about Isabella. Think about Tommy. Don't let them do this. Michael's face crumpled, and for a moment Elena thought he might find the courage to protect her. Instead, he looked away. I'm sorry, Elena. I'm so sorry. As the stranger reached for Elena's arm, she made a decision that would either save her life or end it. She was done being passive. She was done letting other people decide her fate. Elena Vasquez was about to fight back. Elena's hand found the ceramic fruit bowl on the kitchen counter, a wedding gift from Michael's mother that had sat in the same spot for 6 years. Without hesitation, she hurled it at the stranger's head. The bowl shattered against his temple, sending him staggering backward with blood streaming down his face. Elena bolted for the back door, but Michael caught her around the waist. "Elena, stop! You're going to hurt the baby." She spun in his arms, bringing her knee up toward his groin, but he twisted away at the last second. For a moment they struggled, and Elena saw something flicker across Michael's face, genuine fear, but not for himself. "Elena, listen to me. These people will kill you if you run. They'll kill Tommy. They'll kill our daughter." Michael's voice was desperate, urgent. "The only way to keep you safe is to cooperate." The stranger was back on his feet, wiping blood from his forehead and looking significantly less friendly. "Mrs. Vasquez just assaulted a federal officer." Elena's world tilted sideways. "What?" The man reached into his jacket and pulled out an FBI badge. "Agent Marcus Webb, Financial Crimes Division. And you've just committed a felony." Elena's mind reeled. "That's impossible," Detective Rivera said. "Said what?" Michael's voice was sharp. "Elena, who is Detective Rivera?" The question hit Elena like a physical blow. She'd never verified Rivera's identity. She'd never asked to see his badge, never confirmed that he was actually FBI. She'd just assumed that anyone who knew about the bank statements and had access to crime scene photos must be legitimate law enforcement. "Mrs. Vasquez," Agent Webb continued, pressing a handkerchief to his bleeding temple, "Detective Rivera doesn't exist. There is no Detective James Rivera in any law enforcement agency in this city." Elena's legs gave out. She sank into one of the kitchen chairs, her mind frantically trying to process what she was hearing. But he knew about the investigation. He had photographs, evidence. He had information that someone fed him specifically to manipulate you. Webb's tone was matter-of-fact, professional. "Mrs. Vasquez, you've been played." Michael knelt beside Elena's chair, his face a mask of concern that she no longer knew how to read. "Elena, what did this Rivera person tell you to do?" Elena's mouth was dry as dust. He said to act normal. To gather more evidence. 2. She looked at her purse, thinking about the recording device. "Oh God." Webb followed her gaze. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to hand over any recording equipment you might be carrying." Elena's hands shook as she opened her purse and removed the small device Rivera had given her. Webb examined it carefully, then showed it to Michael. "This isn't FBI equipment. It's commercial grade, probably Chinese manufacture. Whoever this Rivera person is, he's not law enforcement." Elena felt like she was drowning in quicksand. Every assumption she'd made, every decision she'd based on Rivera's information, had been built on lies. But the crime scene photos could have been fabricated, or stolen from actual case files. Webb pocketed the recording device. "Mrs. Vasquez, how much did you tell this person about what you found in your husband's safe?" The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Elena had told Rivera everything, about the bank statements, about the invoices, about her suspicions regarding city contracts. She'd given a complete stranger access to information that could destroy her husband. "Elena," Michael's voice was gentle, patient. The voice of the man she'd fallen in love with. "What did you tell him?" "Everything." The word came out as a whisper. "I told him everything." Michael and Webb exchanged a look that Elena couldn't interpret. "Mrs. Vasquez," Webb said carefully, "I need you to understand something. Your husband has been working undercover for the FBI for 8 months. Elena's world exploded into fragments. "What?" "Michael came to us last year when he realized that Morrison Construction was trying to involve him in a bribery scheme. Instead of reporting it immediately, he agreed to help us build a case against the entire operation." Elena stared at Michael, searching his face for truth in a universe where nothing made sense anymore. "Your FBI?" "No, but I'm working with them." "Elena, those bank accounts you found, they're part of an elaborate sting operation. The money isn't real. It's FBI funds being used to track how Morrison's organization moves dirty money." Elena's mind was spinning so fast she felt physically sick. "But Rebecca Morrison is also working undercover. She's been an FBI asset for 2 years. Michael's voice was patient, like he was explaining something simple to a child. "Elena, there is no affair. There never was." The relief that flooded through Elena was immediately followed by a more devastating realization. "Why didn't you tell me?" Michael's face darkened. "Because we couldn't risk the operation. Because the people we're trying to catch have killed to protect their secrets. Because I thought I could keep you and the children safe by keeping you ignorant. But I found the bank statements. I confronted you in court, which almost destroyed 8 months of careful work. Webb's tone was sharp with reproach. Mrs. Vasquez, your actions this morning put yourself, your husband, and our entire investigation at risk. Elena felt like she was falling through space. So Judge Martinez is cooperating with the investigation. The court hearing was planned, Elena. We needed a reason for you to discover the evidence without compromising Michael's cover. Elena stared at her husband, trying to reconcile this new information with everything she thought she knew. The jewelry receipt, Rebecca's necklace, a prop, part of maintaining her cover as my mistress. Michael's voice carried a hint of his old warmth. Elena, I hated every second of it. Hated letting you think I was betraying you. But you were betraying me. Elena's voice was rising with each word. You were lying to me for 8 months. You let me believe our marriage was falling apart. You let me think you were having an affair while I was pregnant with your daughter. Michael's face crumpled. I was trying to protect you. By destroying me? Elena struggled to her feet, her hands protectively cradling her belly. Do you have any idea what these months have been like for me? The nights I stayed awake wondering what I'd done wrong? The times I stared at myself in the mirror wondering why I wasn't enough for you anymore. Elena. No. Elena's voice was steel. You don't get to Elena me. You made a choice to prioritize an FBI operation over your pregnant wife's emotional well-being. You chose to let me suffer rather than trust me with the truth. Webb cleared his throat. Mrs. Vasquez, I understand you're upset, but we have a bigger problem now. Whoever this Rivera person is, he has detailed information about our operation. Information that could get people killed. Elena turned on him with fury she didn't know she possessed. Don't you dare try to make this my fault. Your operation was compromised because you chose to lie to me instead of trusting me. Because my husband decided that I was too weak or too stupid to handle the truth. That's not, Michael started. That's exactly what you decided. Elena's voice was shaking with rage and hurt. You decided that I couldn't be trusted with information about my own life. About my own marriage. About my own family. Michael looked stricken. Elena, if the operation had been exposed, people would have died. Real people. Including you and our children. And instead, you just let me die a little bit every day for 8 months. Elena's eyes filled with tears. You let me believe that the man I loved had stopped loving me back. The silence that followed was deafening. Elena could hear the clock ticking on the kitchen wall, could feel the baby moving restlessly inside her, could see the remains of her shattered marriage scattered around them like pieces of broken ceramic. Mrs. Vasquez, Webb said finally, we need to figure out who Rivera is and what he wants. Which means we need to trace how he contacted you. Elena laughed bitterly. He didn't contact me. He just appeared after I left the courthouse. Almost like he was waiting for me. Michael and Webb exchanged another look. Elena, describe this Rivera person. Everything you can remember. Elena closed her eyes, calling up the memory of the man who'd convinced her to betray her husband. Tall, Latino, maybe mid-40s. Handsome. Calloused hands. Said he was Financial Crimes Division. Webb was already on his phone. I need a full background check on anyone matching that description who might have access to our case files. He paused, listening. No, I don't care what time it is. We have a potential leak. Elena sank back into her chair, emotionally exhausted. Michael, who else knows about the operation? The FBI team, the prosecutors, Judge Martinez, and a few select city officials. Michael's voice was grim. Elena, if Rivera knew enough to approach you with fake credentials and real information, then someone with access to our operation is feeding him intelligence. Or, Webb said, ending his phone call, Rivera is part of Morrison's organization, and they've been onto us for months. The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. You mean the people you're trying to catch know that you're trying to catch them? It's possible. Webb's expression was grave. Which would mean that every move we've made, every piece of evidence we've gathered, has been carefully orchestrated by the people we're investigating. Elena looked at Michael, seeing her own fear reflected in his eyes. What does that mean for us? It means, Webb said quietly, that you and your family are in more danger than we ever imagined. And it means that this operation just became a fight for survival. Elena's phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. Asterisk Mrs. Vasquez. I hope you've had time to think about our conversation. I'll be in touch soon. Rivera asterisk. Elena showed the message to Michael and Webb, watching their faces go pale. He's still out there, she whispered. And he knows exactly where to find us. Agent Webb's phone rang before any of them could process the implications of Rivera's text message. His face went ashen as he listened to whoever was on the other end. When? Webb's voice was sharp. How many casualties? A pause. Jesus Christ. We're compromised across the board. Elena felt the baby kick hard, as if Isabella could sense the tension radiating from every adult in the room. What's happened? Webb ended the call and looked directly at Michael. Rebecca Morrison was found dead in her apartment 20 minutes ago. Single gunshot wound to the head, staged to look like suicide. The words hit Michael like a physical blow. Elena watched her husband's face cycle through shock, grief, and then a cold fury she'd never seen before. She had a daughter, Michael said quietly. 8 years old. Lives with her grandmother in Phoenix. Elena's anger at Michael's deception suddenly felt petty compared to the reality of a child who would never see her mother again. Michael, I'm so sorry. Mrs. Vasquez, Webb continued, there's more. Our safe house in the warehouse district was attacked an hour ago. 3 agents down, our entire surveillance operation destroyed. Elena's blood turned to ice. Tommy. Where's Tommy? Safe for now. But we have to assume that whoever Rivera is working for has access to all our operational details. Webb was already moving toward the kitchen window, peering through the blinds. Which means they know about this house, they know about our protection protocols, and they know we're here right now. Elena struggled to her feet, her pregnancy making every movement feel clumsy and vulnerable. What are you saying? I'm saying we need to move. Now! Michael was already grabbing Elena's coat from the closet. Elena, pack a bag. Just essentials. We have maybe 10 minutes before. The front window exploded inward in a shower of glass and smoke. Elena screamed, instinctively throwing her arms around her belly as Webb shoved both her and Michael toward the back of the house. Through the smoke, Elena could see dark figures moving through her living room. The same living room where she'd read bedtime stories to Tommy, where she and Michael had planned their future, where they'd assembled the crib for Isabella. Back door, Webb shouted, drawing his weapon. Move. But as they reached the kitchen door that led to their backyard, Elena could see more figures positioning themselves outside. They were surrounded. Upstairs, Michael said grimly. Elena's office has a window that opens onto the neighbor's roof. Webb nodded, then grabbed Elena's arm. Mrs. Vasquez, I need you to understand something. Whoever orchestrated this knew exactly when and where to find us. That level of intelligence means someone in our operation has been feeding them information from the beginning. Elena's mind raced as they climbed the stairs. You think someone in the FBI is working with Morrison's people? I think someone has been playing all of us from the start. Webb's voice was grim as they reached the second floor. Including your husband. Elena stopped dead on the landing. What do you mean? Michael spun around, his face flushed with anger. He means he thinks I'm the mole. Are you? Elena's question came out as a whisper. The silence that followed lasted exactly 3 seconds and broke Elena's heart completely. Michael looked directly into her eyes, and Elena saw something there she'd never seen before. Not guilt, not shame, but a kind of desperate calculation that made her blood freeze. Elena, I need you to know that everything I've done has been to protect you and the children. That's not an answer to my question. Mrs. Vasquez, Webb interrupted. We need to keep moving. We can sort out loyalties later. But Elena planted her feet and refused to move another step. No, we sort this out right now. Michael, are you working with the people who killed Rebecca Morrison? Michael's face crumpled. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. Elena's voice was steady despite the terror clawing at her chest. Are you the reason Rebecca is dead? Are you the reason Tommy is in danger? Are you the reason our daughter might be born into a world where her father is a murderer? Elena, they have Tommy. The words hit Elena like a sledgehammer. What? The people downstairs, they don't just want to kill us. They have our son. They took him from the after-school program 2 hours ago. Michael's voice was breaking. They said if I didn't cooperate, if I didn't help them clean up this operation, they'd kill him. Elena felt the world tilt sideways. You chose to save Tommy by betraying Rebecca? I chose to save my family by giving them what they wanted. Michael's eyes were filled with tears. Elena, they sent me a video of Tommy tied up in a basement somewhere. They told me exactly what they'd do to him if I didn't follow their instructions. Webb was staring at Michael with undisguised disgust. So you led them to Rebecca. You gave them our safe house locations. You've been feeding them intelligence for how long? 3 days. Ever since they took Tommy. Michael looked at Elena with desperate eyes. Elena, I had minutes to decide. Save one child I barely knew, or save the son who calls me dad. Elena understood then why Michael had looked so haggard lately, why he'd seemed distracted and distant. He hadn't been planning to leave her for another woman. He'd been trying to figure out how to save their family from people who would kill a child without hesitation. Michael, why didn't you tell me? Because they said if I told anyone, if I deviated from their instructions at all, Tommy would die. Michael's voice was raw with anguish. Elena, I've been living in hell for 3 days, trying to figure out how to save everyone, and knowing it was impossible. Elena felt something tear apart inside her chest. Not just her marriage, but her understanding of right and wrong, of the choices people make when they're forced to choose between different kinds of love. Where is he? She asked quietly. Where's Tommy? I don't know. They move him every few hours. They call me with instructions, I follow them, and they send me proof that he's still alive. Webb's radio crackled to life. Control to Unit 7. We have eyes on the targets. Repeat, we have eyes on all 3 targets. Elena realized with growing horror that Webb was speaking into his radio, not listening to it. Agent Webb. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. Who are you talking to? Webb smiled, and Elena saw the face of a predator. I'm talking to my real employers, Mrs. Vasquez. The people who've been paying me to monitor this operation from the inside. Michael stepped protectively in front of Elena. You son of a bitch. You're the mole. I'm the insurance policy. Webb's gun was now pointed directly at Michael's chest. Did you really think Morrison Construction was operating without federal protection? Did you think an organization that's stolen $50 million from this city over the past 5 years didn't have people inside law enforcement? Elena felt the baby kick frantically, as if Isabella could sense the danger surrounding them. Agent Webb, please. I'm pregnant. Whatever this is about, my daughter doesn't deserve to pay for it. Your daughter is collateral damage in a much bigger game, Mrs. Vasquez. Webb's voice was matter-of-fact, professional. A game that your husband has been losing for the past 8 months. Michael's hands were raised, but Elena could see him calculating distances, angles, possibilities. What do you want? I want you to disappear. Permanently. Both of you. The operation is blown, Rebecca's dead, and now we need to clean up all the loose ends. Elena's mind was racing. What about Tommy? What about the people who took him? Webb laughed. Mrs. Vasquez, there are no people who took Tommy. Your son is perfectly safe at his after-school program, being supervised by actual FBI agents. Elena stared at him in shock. But Michael said what we told him to say. We've been feeding him false information for 3 days, making him think his son was in danger, so he'd cooperate with dismantling the investigation from the inside. Elena looked at Michael, seeing the exact moment he realized he'd been played just as thoroughly as she had. You mean Tommy was never kidnapped? Tommy was never in danger. Until now. Webb's smile was cold. But children do sometimes become casualties when their parents make poor choices. Elena felt something harden inside her chest. Not fear, not desperation, but a crystalline rage that burned away everything else. Agent Webb, I need you to understand something about mothers. What's that, Mrs. Vasquez? We're a lot more dangerous than we look. Elena grabbed the brass lamp from her office desk and swung it at Webb's gun hand with every ounce of strength she possessed. The weapon went flying as Webb staggered backward, cursing. Michael didn't hesitate. He tackled Webb, sending both men crashing into Elena's filing cabinet. Elena, run! Michael shouted as he grappled with Webb. Get to the neighbors, call 911, get help. But Elena didn't run. Instead, she grabbed Webb's dropped weapon and pointed it at both men with hands that were surprisingly steady. Both of you stop moving. Right now. Michael and Webb froze, staring at Elena in shock. Elena, Michael said carefully, what are you doing? I'm taking control of this situation. Elena's voice was calm, determined. Because I'm done being lied to. I'm done being manipulated. And I'm done letting other people make decisions about my family's safety. Elena looked at Webb, then at Michael, then at the wedding ring she still wore despite everything that had happened. Now one of you is going to tell me the truth. All of it. And then we're going to figure out how to get out of this alive. The silence that followed was broken by Elena's phone buzzing with another text message. Without taking the gun off the 2 men, she glanced at the screen. Asterisk Elena, it's time we met in person. Come alone to 1247 Riverside Drive. Come now, or Tommy dies for real this time. Rivera asterisk. Elena felt the last piece of her old life crumble away. Tommy was in danger after all. And now she had to choose between saving her husband and saving her son. Elena stared at the text message, her mind calculating possibilities with the cold precision of an accountant analyzing a balance sheet. Tommy was either in real danger or this was another manipulation. Michael was either a victim or a traitor. Webb was definitely corrupt, but was he working alone? Elena, Michael said carefully, put the gun down. Whatever that message says, we can figure this out together. Together? Elena laughed bitterly. Michael, I don't even know who you are anymore. For 8 months, you've been someone I don't recognize. How do I know this isn't just another lie? Webb, still on the floor where Michael had tackled him, was slowly reaching for something in his jacket. Elena swung the gun toward him. Don't move. Don't even breathe wrong. Mrs. Vasquez, Webb said, his voice taking on a conciliatory tone. You're making a mistake. I'm still FBI, just not the kind your husband thinks he's been working with. There are levels to this operation that neither of you understand. Elena felt the baby kick hard, and suddenly she understood something with perfect clarity. Isabella was responding to her mother's stress hormones, to the adrenaline and fear flooding Elena's system. Her daughter was experiencing this terror along with her. That realization triggered something fundamental in Elena's psyche. No, she said quietly. I'm done with levels and lies and operations. I'm done with men in suits making decisions about my family's life. Elena pulled out her phone and called the number Rivera had texted from. Michael started to protest, but Elena silenced him with a look that could have cut glass. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Elena, I was hoping you'd call. Who are you? Elena's voice was steel. And I want the truth this time. I'm someone who's been watching this operation destroy innocent people for 2 years. Someone who's been trying to find a way to expose it without getting killed. Are you really Rivera? A pause. My name is David Morales. I'm an investigative journalist with the Washington Herald. I've been tracking Morrison Construction's connections to federal law enforcement for 18 months. Elena felt another piece of the puzzle click into place. You're not FBI. No, but I've been pretending to be FBI to gain access to people involved in the case. Elena, your husband isn't working undercover for the FBI. He's working undercover for Morrison Construction. Elena looked at Michael, seeing something flicker across his face. Not surprise. Recognition. Michael, Elena said quietly. Is that true? Michael's shoulders sagged. Elena, it's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. Morrison Construction approached me 18 months ago. They knew the FBI was getting close to their operation, and they needed someone inside the architecture community to help them create plausible documentation for their money laundering. Elena felt like she was watching her husband confess to murder. So you helped them. I helped them create fake invoices, dummy corporations, architectural plans for projects that never existed. Michael's voice was barely audible. Elena, they offered me more money than our firm made in 3 years. Money we needed for Tommy's medical bills, for the new baby, for the life we wanted to build. And Rebecca? Rebecca Morrison is exactly who she appears to be. The head of a criminal organization who's been stealing from this city for years. Michael looked directly at Elena. And yes, we were having an affair. That part was real. Elena felt something inside her chest die completely. Not just her marriage, but her faith in her own judgment, her belief that she could tell when someone she loved was lying to her. How long? She asked. The affair or the criminal conspiracy? Both. The business relationship started 18 months ago. The personal relationship started 6 months ago. Elena did the math. You started sleeping with Rebecca after you found out I was pregnant with Isabella. Michael's face crumpled. Elena, the pregnancy changed everything. The financial pressure, the responsibility, the fear that I couldn't provide for another child. So you decided to become a criminal. I decided to take care of my family by any means necessary. Elena looked at Webb, who was watching this conversation with the fascination of someone observing a car crash. And you? What's your role in all this? I'm FBI, but I've been investigating Morrison Construction independently. My superiors don't know about my investigation because I suspected there was corruption in the Bureau. Webb's voice was earnest, pleading. Elena, everything I told you about being in danger is true. Morrison's organization kills people who become liabilities. Elena felt like she was drowning in competing versions of the truth. Everyone claimed to be protecting her. Everyone claimed to be the good guy, and everyone had been lying to her. Her phone buzzed with another text from Morales. Asterisk Elena, you have 10 minutes to get to that address or Tommy dies. This isn't a game anymore. Asterisk. Elena looked around her office. At the diplomas on the wall from the accounting degree she'd earned while working 2 jobs and raising a baby. At the family photos that now felt like evidence of a life that had never really existed. At the men who claimed to love her, but had spent months treating her like a chess piece in games she wasn't allowed to understand. I'm done, she said quietly. Elena, what do you mean? Michael asked. I'm done being the person everyone lies to in order to protect her. I'm done being the good wife who trusts her husband while he builds their life on blood money. I'm done being the victim in everyone else's story. Elena stepped toward the window that overlooked their backyard, the gun still trained on both men. Michael, do you love Rebecca? The question hung in the air like a blade. Elena, that's not. It's the only question that matters now. Do you love her? Michael was quiet for so long that Elena had her answer before he spoke. Yes, he whispered. I love you both. Elena nodded, feeling something settle into place in her chest. Not peace, but resolution. Webb, are you really FBI? Yes. And Morales is really a journalist? As far as I know, yes. Elena looked at her wedding ring, then at the slight curve of her belly where Isabella was growing. Her daughter would be born into whatever world Elena created in the next few minutes. Here's what's going to happen, Elena said, her voice carrying an authority that surprised everyone in the room, including herself. Webb, you're going to call your FBI colleagues, the real ones, and tell them exactly what's been happening here. Michael, you're going to tell them everything you know about Morrison Construction's operation. And I'm going to go get my son. Elena, you can't go alone, Michael protested. It's too dangerous. Michael, you lost the right to worry about my safety when you decided to commit crimes while I was pregnant with your daughter. Elena moved toward the door, keeping the gun pointed at both men. If I'm not back with Tommy in 2 hours, Webb, you arrest my husband for conspiracy, fraud, and whatever other charges apply. Michael, you cooperate completely with the FBI, and maybe Isabella will have a father who's not in prison for the rest of her life. Elena, wait, Michael called out as she reached the door. What about us? What about our marriage? Elena turned back to look at the man she'd planned to spend her life with. Michael, our marriage ended the moment you chose crime over honesty. The moment you chose Rebecca over me. The moment you decided that I wasn't strong enough to handle the truth. I was trying to protect you. You were trying to protect yourself. Elena's voice was calm, final. From responsibility, from consequences, from having to be the kind of man who deserved the family he claimed to love. Elena started down the stairs, then paused. Webb, if anything happens to me or Tommy, if this goes wrong in any way, I want you to know that Michael chose to let it happen. I want that in your report. As Elena reached the front door, stepping over the broken glass from the earlier chaos, she heard Michael calling her name. But she didn't turn around. For the first time in 8 months, Elena Vasquez was making her own choices about her own life. And if those choices led to disaster, at least they would be her disasters, not someone else's. Elena climbed into her car, placed the gun on the passenger seat, and drove toward an address that might be a trap, to save a son who might already be dead, from people who might be lying about everything. But as she drove through the city where she'd built a life based on lies, Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in months. She felt powerful. She felt like herself again. And that feeling was worth risking everything to protect. Because Elena had finally understood the choice she'd been avoiding all along. It wasn't between Michael and Tommy, or between truth and lies, or between safety and danger. It was between being the kind of woman who let other people control her story and being the kind of woman who wrote her own ending. Even if that ending cost her everything she thought she wanted. The address led Elena to an abandoned warehouse in the industrial district. Exactly the kind of location where bad things happened in movies. But Elena had moved beyond caring about movie logic. She parked directly in front of the main entrance, left the gun visible on her dashboard, and walked through the front door like she owned the place. The warehouse was empty except for a single folding table in the center of the vast space. A man sat behind it, the same man who had approached her as Detective Rivera, but now Elena could see him clearly without the adrenaline and confusion of their first meeting. He was younger than she'd thought, maybe early 30s, with the kind of lean build that came from stress rather than exercise. His hands shook slightly as he gestured for her to sit in the chair across from him. Elena, thank you for coming. Where's my son? Safe. Tommy is safe, I promise you that. Elena remained standing. Prove it. The man, Morales, Rivera, whoever he really was, pulled out his phone and showed her a live video feed. Tommy was sitting in what looked like a library, working on homework, completely unaware he was being watched. That's the public library on Cedar Street. He goes there every day after school. He's been there for the past 3 hours, supervised by a librarian who thinks she's part of a child protection program. Elena felt relief flood through her, followed immediately by anger. So he was never kidnapped. No. But Elena, I need you to understand something. Tommy has been in danger, just not the way your husband thought. What do you mean? Morales stood up, and Elena could see exhaustion in every line of his body. My name is David Morales, and I am a journalist. But I'm not investigating Morrison Construction. Elena felt the familiar sensation of the ground shifting beneath her feet. Then what are you investigating? You. The word hung in the air like a gunshot. I'm investigating Elena Vasquez, whose father was Carlos Mendoza, who disappeared 12 years ago after stealing $4 million from the pension fund of the Construction Workers Union. Elena's world exploded. That's impossible. My father died in a car accident when I was 22. Your father faked his death and fled to Mexico with money that belonged to working families. Money that was supposed to provide retirement security for people who'd spent their lives building this city. Elena's legs gave out. She sank into the chair, her mind racing through memories she'd thought she understood. Her father's closed casket funeral. The life insurance money that had paid for her accounting degree. The way her mother had refused to talk about the details of the accident. Elena, Morrison Construction has been looking for your father for 12 years. Not because they're criminals, because they're trying to recover stolen money to return to the families he destroyed. But the FBI investigation is real. But it's not investigating Morrison Construction for corruption. It's investigating them for vigilante justice. For taking the law into their own hands to recover stolen funds. Elena felt like she was falling through space. You're saying Morrison Construction are the good guys? I'm saying Morrison Construction started as a legitimate company trying to recover money stolen from working families. But over the years, their methods became questionable. Morales pulled out a thick folder and spread photographs across the table. Elena recognized some of the faces, city officials, business leaders, people she'd seen in the news. These are all connected to your father's theft, Elena. Some were complicit, some were victims, some were trying to recover the money. Morrison Construction has been systematically targeting everyone involved for over a decade. Elena stared at the photographs, her accountant's mind automatically organizing the information. They've been hunting down everyone connected to my father's crime, including your father's family. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. They've been targeting me because of something my father did 12 years ago? Elena, you've been under surveillance since you married Michael. Morrison Construction has been watching you, waiting to see if your father would make contact, if he'd hidden any of the stolen money with your family. Elena thought about the strange coincidences over the past few years. The business opportunities that had fallen into Michael's lap, the city contracts that had seemed too good to be true, the way their life had gradually become intertwined with people and projects connected to Morrison Construction. Michael doesn't know, does he? About my father? Michael thinks he seduced Rebecca Morrison to gain access to lucrative contracts. He has no idea that Rebecca Morrison seduced him to gain access to you. Elena felt the baby kick hard, as if Isabella was responding to her mother's emotional earthquake. Rebecca was using Michael to get to me. Rebecca Morrison's real name is Rebecca Mendoza. She's your half-sister, Elena. Your father had another family before you were born. Elena's vision blurred. She gripped the edge of the table, trying to anchor herself in a reality that kept shifting. Rebecca is my sister? Your father stole that money to support 2 families. When the theft was discovered, he abandoned both families and fled. Rebecca has spent 12 years trying to find him, and she believed you were the key. Elena's mind raced through every interaction she'd had with Rebecca Morrison. The woman's intense interest in Elena's family history. The way she'd asked probing questions about Elena's childhood, her relationship with her father. The affair with Michael that had seemed to come out of nowhere. She was sleeping with my husband to get information about me. She was sleeping with your husband to get close enough to search your house, your files, your family records. looking for any clue about where your father might have hidden the stolen money. Elena stood up abruptly, pacing to the window that looked out over the industrial landscape. And Michael? Michael got caught in the middle. He thought he was being recruited for a criminal conspiracy. He had no idea he was being used as a pawn in a 12-year-old revenge plot. Elena turned back to Morales. What about Agent Webb? Webb is real FBI, but he's not investigating Morrison Construction. He's investigating the pension fund theft. He's been trying to build a case against your father for over a decade. Elena felt like she was assembling a jigsaw puzzle, where every piece changed the picture completely. So everyone has been lying to me, but about different things. Everyone has been lying to you because they all want something different. Morrison Construction wants to find your father. The FBI wants to prosecute your father. Michael just wants to provide for his family and got manipulated by people who saw him as a useful tool. Elena looked down at her wedding ring, thinking about the man she'd left behind in their house. Michael really doesn't know about my father? Michael knows nothing about your father. He just knows that Rebecca Morrison offered him a lot of money for architectural services and that he was desperate enough to say yes. Elena felt something shift inside her chest. Not forgiveness for Michael's choices, but understanding of the context that had shaped them. David, why are you telling me all this? What do you want? Morales was quiet for a long moment. Elena, I've been investigating this story for 2 years. I've watched Morrison Construction destroy lives in their quest for justice. I've watched the FBI pursue a man who's probably been dead for years. I've watched innocent people get caught in a cycle of revenge and retribution that serves no one. And I think you're the only person who can end it. Elena stared at him. How? Because you're the only person all the parties trust. Morrison Construction needs you to help them find your father. The FBI needs you to testify about what you know. Michael needs you to forgive him for choices he made under false pretenses. Elena felt the weight of impossible expectations settling on her shoulders. I can't give them what they want. I don't know where my father is. I don't even know if he's still alive. But you have something else they all need. What? Morales pulled out one final document and placed it on the table. Elena recognized it immediately. It was her father's life insurance policy, the one that had paid for her education. Elena, that life insurance policy was purchased with stolen money. It represents the only recoverable asset from your father's theft. For $1 million that has been sitting in an investment account for 12 years, growing interest. Elena stared at the document. You're saying I've been living off stolen money my entire adult life? I'm saying you have the power to return that money to the families your father destroyed. And in doing so, you can end this cycle of revenge that has consumed everyone involved. Elena felt the weight of the choice settling around her like a physical presence. Return the money and lose the financial security that had shaped her entire adult life. Keep the money and remain forever connected to a crime that had destroyed multiple families. If I return the money, what happens to Morrison Construction's investigation? It ends. They get back the money they've been trying to recover for 12 years. What happens to the FBI investigation? It ends. They recover the stolen assets, which is all they can realistically hope for at this point. And what happens to Michael? Michael gets a chance to start over with a wife who understands why he made the choices he made. Elena looked around the empty warehouse, thinking about the life she'd built on a foundation she'd never understood. Every opportunity, every advantage, every moment of financial security had been built on money stolen from working families. But returning the money would mean starting over completely. No house, no savings, no safety net for Isabella's future. David, I need you to be completely honest with me about something. What? If I don't return the money, what happens to my family? Morales' expression was grave. Elena, Morrison Construction has been patient for 12 years. But Rebecca's death has changed everything. They're not going to wait any longer. Meaning you have a choice. Return the money voluntarily and end this peacefully, or watch as everyone you love becomes collateral damage in a war you didn't start but can't escape. Elena placed her hands on her belly, feeling Isabella's strong kicks. Her daughter would be born into whatever world Elena chose to create in the next few minutes. She thought about Michael, sitting in their house with a corrupt FBI agent, believing he'd been protecting his family while actually putting them in more danger. She thought about Tommy, innocent and unaware in the library, doing homework while adults fought over crimes that had happened before he was born. She thought about the families her father had destroyed, the retirement dreams he'd stolen, the working people who'd trusted a union leader who'd betrayed them. And she thought about the woman she'd become over the past few hours. Someone who'd stopped accepting other people's versions of her story and started writing her own. David, I want you to set up a meeting. I want Rebecca Morrison's partners, the FBI agents investigating my father, and my husband all in the same room. Elena, that's incredibly dangerous. I'm done with separate conversations and hidden agendas. If everyone wants something from me, they can ask for it directly. Elena stood up, feeling stronger and more certain than she had in months. And David, I want you there too, with cameras rolling. Because this story ends today, and I want everyone to see exactly how it ends. Morales stared at her in admiration and terror. Elena, you understand that some of these people have killed to protect their interests? Then they'll have to decide if they're willing to kill a pregnant woman on camera in front of federal agents and journalists. Elena's voice was steel. Because I'm done hiding. I'm done being afraid. And I'm done letting other people decide what my family's future looks like. Elena walked toward the door, then turned back. David, set up that meeting for tomorrow morning. And make sure everyone understands that if they want the money, they're going to have to explain to the world exactly why they think they deserve it. As Elena left the warehouse, she felt something she'd never experienced before. She felt like the protagonist of her own story. And she was about to write an ending that no one saw coming. Elena walked into the downtown hotel conference room like she was entering a boardroom where she was about to close the biggest deal of her career. Which, in a way, she was. Michael sat at one end of the polished mahogany table, flanked by two men in expensive suits who had to be Morrison Construction's lawyers. Agent Webb sat across from them with three other FBI agents Elena didn't recognize. David Morales had positioned himself and a camera crew along the back wall, ready to document whatever happened next. And at the head of the table, in the chair that faced everyone else, Elena had placed a single manila folder and a cashier's check. Before anyone says anything, Elena began, her voice carrying the kind of authority that made every person in the room fall silent. I want to establish some ground rules for this conversation. She placed her hands on her belly, feeling Isabella's reassuring kicks. First, everything said in this room today is being recorded and will be part of Mr. Morales's investigative report. Second, anyone who tries to leave before we're finished will be considered an admission of guilt in whatever crimes we're discussing. Third, I'm 6 months pregnant, so if anyone even thinks about threatening me, they'll be doing it on camera in front of federal agents. One of Morrison Construction's lawyers started to speak, but Elena held up her hand. I'm not finished. Fourth, I know everything. I know about my father's theft. I know about Rebecca being my half-sister. I know about the 12-year investigation. I know about Michael's involvement and Agent Webb's corruption. So no one in this room gets to lie to me anymore. Elena opened the manila folder and pulled out a thick stack of documents. These are complete financial records showing the movement of the $4 million my father stole from the construction workers' pension fund. Money that has been sitting in investment accounts tied to my life insurance policy for 12 years. She slid copies of the documents to each group around the table. As of this morning, that $4 million has grown to $6.7 million through compound interest. Elena picked up the cashier's check and held it where everyone could see it. This check represents the complete return of all stolen funds, plus interest, plus an additional $1 million as compensation for the suffering caused by my father's theft. The silence in the room was deafening. Mrs. Vasquez, one of Morrison Construction's lawyers, finally said, "We appreciate this gesture, but our investigation has identified other assets." "There are no other assets," Elena interrupted. "This is everything. My father didn't hide money in offshore accounts or secret trusts. He spent most of what he stole supporting 2 families, and the rest went into the life insurance policy that funded my education." Elena looked directly at the Morrison Construction team. "And I know this because I spent the past 18 hours doing what I do best, following money trails through financial records. I've traced every dollar my father touched in the 2 years before his supposed death." Agent Webb leaned forward. "Mrs. Vasquez, the FBI investigation isn't just about recovering money. Your father committed federal crimes that carry serious penalties." "My father is dead," Elena said flatly. "He actually died in that car accident 12 years ago. The death certificate was real, the insurance investigation was real, and the closed casket funeral was necessary because of the condition of his body after the accident." Elena pulled out another document. This is the medical examiner's report, which I obtained yesterday through a records request. Carlos Mendoza died 3 days after the pension fund theft was discovered, while driving to Mexico with whatever cash he could carry. She looked around the table, seeing the careful calculations on every face. Which means everyone in this room has spent over a decade chasing a dead man. Michael spoke for the first time. Elena, if your father is dead, then why didn't this come out during the investigation? Because my mother was terrified that I'd be blamed for his crimes. She buried the truth to protect me, and I've been living with the consequences ever since. Elena stood up, walking to the window that looked out over the city where her father had stolen from working families, where her husband had been seduced into criminal conspiracy, where she'd built a life on blood money without knowing it. But here's what I've realized over the past few days. This was never really about my father's crime. This was about everyone in this room being so focused on the past that they were willing to destroy the present to settle old scores. She turned back to face them. Morrison Construction, you've spent 12 years turning yourselves into the very kind of criminals you were fighting against. You've bribed officials, manipulated investigations, and murdered people to recover money that could have been returned through legal channels. The Morrison lawyers started to object, but Elena continued. Agent Webb, you've spent 12 years ignoring actual federal crimes because you were obsessed with prosecuting a dead man. You've allowed corruption to flourish in your own agency while chasing ghosts. Elena looked at Michael, feeling a complex mixture of love, disappointment, and understanding. And Michael, you've spent the past 18 months lying to your pregnant wife because you were too proud to admit you needed help and too scared to trust me with the truth. Elena returned to her seat, placing the cashier's check in the center of the table. So here's how this ends. This money goes to the pension fund families, with interest and compensation. Morrison Construction dissolves their vigilante operation and returns to legitimate business. Agent Webb retires from the FBI and finds a new career that doesn't involve lying to pregnant women. And your husband? One of the Morrison lawyers asked. Elena looked at Michael for a long moment. My husband gets to decide what kind of man he wants to be going forward. But he doesn't get to make that decision while lying to me about who he is or what he's done. Michael's voice was barely above a whisper. Elena, what are you saying? I'm saying that I'm keeping our daughter and our son, and I'm moving forward with my life. You can be part of that life, but only if you're willing to be completely honest about who you are and what you want. Elena's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it and smiled. Tommy just finished his homework at the library. He's being brought here by actual FBI agents, the ones who aren't corrupt, and he's going to learn today that his stepfather made some serious mistakes but is trying to make them right. Agent Webb was studying the documents Elena had provided. Mrs. Vasquez, these financial records, they completely account for the stolen funds. They do, which means your investigation can finally be closed. Elena's voice carried a hint of satisfaction. And Mr. Morales can publish his story about how federal agencies and private organizations can become so obsessed with justice that they lose sight of what justice actually means. Elena stood up again, feeling stronger than she had in months. Gentlemen, I'm going home to make dinner for my son and my husband, if my husband chooses to come home. I'm going to continue building a life for my daughter that's based on truth instead of lies. And I'm going to sleep well tonight knowing that I solved a 12-year-old crime in 18 hours using basic accounting skills and common sense. She picked up her purse, leaving the cashier's check on the table. The money is yours to distribute to the families my father hurt. Use it wisely, because it's the only justice any of them are ever going to get. Elena walked toward the door, then stopped. Oh, and one more thing. David, when you publish this story, I want you to include something important. What's that? I want you to tell people that sometimes the most dangerous lie isn't the one that criminals tell to cover their crimes. Sometimes the most dangerous lie is the one that good people tell themselves to justify becoming something they never intended to be. Elena looked back at Michael one last time. Michael, if you come home tonight, come home ready to tell me the truth about everything. About Rebecca, about the money, about what you want our marriage to look like going forward. If you can't do that, then don't come home at all. As Elena left the conference room, she heard the sound of grown men arguing about money and justice and crimes that had defined their lives for over a decade. But for the first time in months, those arguments felt like someone else's problem. Elena Vasquez had bigger things to think about. She had a son to raise, a daughter to bring into the world, and a life to build that would be completely, honestly her own. 3 hours later, Michael came home. He sat at their kitchen table, the same table where this had all started with lies and deception, and told Elena everything. About his desperation when Tommy's medical bills mounted. About his attraction to Rebecca and his shame about the affair. About his terror when he realized he'd gotten involved with people who killed without hesitation. About his love for Elena and his fear that he'd destroyed everything good in his life. Elena listened without interrupting, her hands folded over her belly where Isabella grew stronger every day. When Michael finished, Elena was quiet for a long time. "Michael," she finally said, "I need you to understand something. I can forgive you for the affair. I can forgive you for the lies. I can even forgive you for getting involved with criminals." Michael's face lit up with hope. "But," Elena continued, "I will never forgive you for not trusting me, for deciding that I was too weak or too naive to handle the truth about our life together." "Elena, I'm not finished." Elena's voice was calm but firm. "If we're going to make this marriage work, it has to be a partnership between equals. No more lies, no more protection, no more decisions made for my own good without my input." Michael nodded eagerly. "Yes, absolutely. Whatever you need. What I need is for you to see me as I actually am, not as someone who needs to be protected from reality." Elena stood up, moving to the window that looked out over their backyard where Tommy was playing with the neighbor's dog. "I'm the woman who solved a 12-year federal investigation in 18 hours. I'm the woman who walked into a room full of criminals and federal agents and took control of the situation. I'm the woman who's going to raise our children and build our life on a foundation of truth." Elena turned back to Michael. "I'm a lot stronger than you gave me credit for. And if you can remember that, if you can treat me like the partner I've always been instead of the victim you thought I was, then we might have a chance." Michael was crying now, and Elena felt her own heart beginning to soften. "Elena, I love you. I've never stopped loving you, even when I was making the worst choices of my life." "I know," Elena said quietly. "But love isn't enough anymore, Michael. I need respect. I need trust. I need to know that when the next crisis comes, and there will be a next crisis, you'll face it with me instead of trying to face it for me." Elena walked over to Michael and took his hands in hers. "Can you do that? Can you be the kind of husband who trusts his wife to be strong enough to handle whatever life throws at us?" Michael looked into Elena's eyes and saw something he'd somehow missed for 8 months. He saw strength, intelligence, and a determination that had solved problems he couldn't even understand. "Yes," he said. "Elena, yes. I can be that husband." Elena smiled, feeling Isabella kick as if their daughter approved of the conversation. "Then let's start over. Not with the marriage we had, but with the marriage we should have had all along." As Elena and Michael embraced in their kitchen, surrounded by the debris of lies that had nearly destroyed them, Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in months. She felt like the author of her own story. And the story she was writing now was one where truth mattered more than comfort, where strength mattered more than protection, and where love was built on respect rather than deception. It was a story worth telling. 6 months later, Elena gave birth to Isabella Vasquez in a hospital room filled with flowers from the construction workers' families who had received their stolen pension money back. Tommy held his baby sister for the first time while Michael looked on, still amazed every day by the woman who had saved their family by refusing to accept anyone else's version of who she should be. Elena never did find out if Michael would have eventually told her the truth on his own. But she did know that she would never again let anyone else decide what truths she was strong enough to handle. And that knowledge was worth more than all the money her father had ever stolen. What did this story teach you about the power of taking control of your own narrative, even when everyone around you insists they're protecting you? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories that will change how you see the world. ***.